Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us in this Ask the Expert session where we're going to be focusing on how you can build more engaging applications with Microsoft Teams and Microsoft 365. You might have just watched our session. It was on probably about 45 minutes ago. So there's a lot of content that we covered. Everything from Microsoft Graph to Microsoft Teams to Office to Windows and everything in between. So understand you probably have a lot of questions. We have a lot of great experts that are here online to go answer them. We've got Alexis Konya, we've got Ben Summers, we've got Bill Ayers, we've got Daniel Pluma, we've got Uni Slow, we've got Jeremy Thake, we've got Wes Hackett, we've got Victor Whelan, and Yannick Riekmans. All on board to kind of answer and cover so many different topics. These are all MVPs and folks that are actually building solutions in the real world. So not just the folks on the marketing team, but also the folks who are doing this in practice, all online to go answer your questions. So in the session, before we get started, I want to just reflect the Microsoft Code of Conduct. So you're asking questions, we're having conversations. It's awesome. Make sure that you pay attention to the Code of Conduct and keep it respectful, of course, and everything from there. Now, in the session, we covered basically the three major ways that you can make your application better using the Microsoft 365 platform. It really starts with, at the bottom layer, you see Microsoft Graph and Microsoft Identity. This basically exposes the entirety of Microsoft 365 as building blocks that you can put inside of your application. So whether you're working with SharePoint files, whether you're maybe, working with tasks, every application probably needs some task system. Rather than going and building your own, why not leverage what's inside of Microsoft 365? You can pull it into your application through Microsoft Graph. There's an amazing set of and growing set of controls that you can use to embed inside of your application through the Graph Toolkit. All these kind of capabilities are there to help jumpstart your building of an application. Of course, the other way to do that is by inheriting and working with the Microsoft Identity system as well. Now, once you've done that, once you've sort of incorporated all those different building blocks, you've got a great application. Why not embed it in the places where people are working, where they're collaborating, where they're collecting everything in one place? Whether that's your inbox inside of Outlook, whether that's inside of Microsoft Teams where people are maybe chatting, or maybe it's inside of Word, for example. So as people are creating legal documents, your application can be right there as well. Generally, we always try to design pretty much every Microsoft 365 application so it's got some extensibility, some way to embed some content. And so it can be a great way to go connect your app to more users. Then finally, of course, you're going to go build these experiences. Probably a lot of times you're going to go build native experiences that harness, native device capabilities, things like web cameras, USB ports, all that good fun stuff. We have a number of technologies that help you build that across platforms, and of course, build it on top of Windows, where we're pretty proud of all the different ways that you can actually integrate with native hardware, graphics performance, those kinds of things, on top of Windows, and across a number of other different platforms as well. Now, in the session, we covered a whirlwind of just what's new kind of content. So just to kind of jog your memory, if you've got questions, we have a lot of different, sessions and content for more answers to your questions. Across Microsoft Ignite, what you'll find is that we have a lot of in-depth content that really covers, a lot of the details of some of the things that we announced that are new. And so for Microsoft Graph in particular, it's every year. We just have so many new things inside of Microsoft Graph because basically as we build new capabilities inside of M365, we then turn around and try to expose them through Graph API. So basically the entirety of the capabilities we have with Microsoft 365 you can build on top of. That's why, for example, things like e-discovery APIs or data lifecycle or maybe some export capabilities or maybe that taxonomy capability that's available through Project Cortex. Those are all available as APIs that you can start to take advantage of, and we have a number of sessions for that. The big news at Microsoft Ignite is that the Graph connector capability is now generally available, and so what this means is you can actually now embed content into Microsoft Graph. It'll show up in search. We're working on new ways to take all that content that's in Graph and show it in a number of other different circumstances as well. The cool thing about Graph connectors is, basically you're working with REST APIs. So if you want to go push your own content into Microsoft Graph and have it show up inside of search, I think it's actually pretty straightforward to do so. So that's pretty cool as well. Tasks through To-Do APIs are now generally available. Now, when you're actually building with these APIs, it's important to have a smooth and streamlined experience. And so we have a number of different SSO capabilities and resource-specific consent, which should make the process of getting permissions easier and more streamlined. We have the Graph PowerShell SDK, which is now generally available, so you can actually write some scripts and write some PowerShell commands to go access all the richness of Graph. Graph Toolkit updates, better SDK coverage, and then when you're done publishing your application, we have more facilities and an ability to make sure that your application is accepted by administrators because it's verified for publishers. Okay, so that covers Graph and all the new things that are going on there. When it comes to actually embedding inside of Microsoft 365 experiences, I think the big news that's really interesting is meetings extensibility in Microsoft Teams. Of course, we're all spending a lot more time in meetings. We're all staring at a Teams window as we speak. You can get more value out of those Teams meetings by actually bringing your code right inside of meetings. And so where you see that right-hand pane on the the right side of your Teams window, where maybe there's a list of people or a list of questions, imagine that your web content is right there as well. So you can, for example, transform a meeting that's a job interview into something that's actually a lot more customized and tailored. Maybe it has a space for taking notes. Maybe it has a set of interview questions you want to go ask. So that meeting can be more than just a video call. It can actually be a really well-structured job interview. But of course, anytime you give people the ability to embed a user experience through HTML in a place, there's just so many different ideas that we look forward to seeing you go build with meetings extensibility. So a lot of cool opportunity there. We have background add-in capability inside of Outlook. So if you want to work in the background and maybe do things to kind of help people author content inside of emails, maybe by doing a little bit of scanning and those kinds of things, those add-ins can now run in the background and can do a number of different things. And that's kind of a sleeper capability. I think that will actually unlock a lot of different possibilities for people, supercharging how they can go compose emails. We have low-code developer capabilities through Office scripts. Go check those out, embedding JavaScript directly inside of Excel spreadsheets. And then, of course, so many people are building really rich applications, across things like SharePoint and Teams. Well, to do that, it really helps to have some great scaffolding and some great developer tools for that. And that's what SharePoint Framework really pulls together. It's got the right infrastructure, the JavaScript APIs, the developer tools to help you get started building applications, not just for SharePoint web parts or SharePoint extensions, but also Microsoft Teams as well. So a very popular scaffolding. There's so many different open source community projects that extend it as well. So more to see there as in addition. And then finally, on top of Windows, the major news for Microsoft Windows is, we're working to kind of make all of the different user experience technologies more flexible and more open. And this is done through, something called Project Reunion, which is this idea that by decoupling all the different user experience control technologies from Windows itself, you make it more flexible for people to go embed these components and these items straight inside of their own Windows applications across a number of different platforms. They have to worry less about compatibility. And so you can get the best of, all these different types of UWB controls, these WinUI controls that you can then start to go use in a number of different circumstances in Windows. We just launched the Surface Duo, and so there's some extended SDKs for actually leveraging and harnessing those two-screen experiences on Android. We have new continuous integration pipelines for MSIX, and then we also have new flexibility for calling WinRT APIs from .NET 5 applications, and you can all get started with that in the Project Reunion repo as well. So a lot of good plumbing going on there too inside of Windows that you can go check out in addition. So a lot of new things. I'm sure you have a lot of different questions about things that are going on. We have a number of different experts online to go take them. With that, I will probably go dip into the chat, into the questions to see what you're thinking about, and we can go from there. All right. So one question that we had just in the session right now previously, which was essentially, what's the difference between, is there a difference between a Power Platform connector and a Microsoft Graph connector? Yeah, it's definitely, we should have new words, but yeah, they're fundamentally different technologies or different types of connector systems. A Power Platform connector, helps you have new triggers and actions for a number of different systems inside of something like Power Automate. So if you want to connect to SAP or something like that from your Power Automate flows, you would use a connector for that. It's a different type of connector system for ingesting and pumping data into Microsoft Graph and the metadata around that. So they are kind of two different connector systems and the like of people that are working on that as well. One question asked was, I've been working with ASP.NET and need to extend SharePoint and Microsoft Teams. Where can I learn about all these new technologies? Like, sorry, can't quite read it. That's my issue. Need to click the see more link.
Node, Yeoman.
Yeah, Node and Yeoman, etc. All right. Yeah. So great question. Well, the first thing to understand is, for example, when you build an application for Microsoft Teams, one of the ways to do that is through a tab. And a tab is essentially kind of an iframe. There is a JavaScript API where you can interact with with the Teams shell, so to speak. You can take advantage of that. But it is essentially an iframe that will point back to your web server. So if you're comfortable building an ASP.NET to go build a web application, you can go build it. You can go host it as a Teams tab. You can also take that Teams tab and host it inside of SharePoint as well. So if you want to have a presence for your application inside of SharePoint, you can basically build it in the technology of your choice. You can host it on any infrastructure of your choice, connect it in through Teams as a tab, and then also then go make it work inside of SharePoint. Going the other direction, there's this SharePoint framework for building applications that will live in SharePoint as things like web parts. And what that really gives you the capability to do is write applications, pretty much in JavaScript. So you're doing a lot of JavaScript coding. It's based on Yeoman to kind of actually get the project scaffolded. It's kind of like the equivalent of Visual Studio's File New Project, if you're familiar with that. And then once you're in there, you're typically going to be writing in TypeScript, probably leveraging React, although you can use a number of other different UI frameworks. And you're basically building a client-side application that will be hosted inside of SharePoint as a SharePoint web part. And you can also connect to backend systems, web services, basically that kind of single page application type of development model where you're building a lot of logic inside of JavaScript. And then you can take that SharePoint framework application and you can host it in Teams. So there's kind of two very broad different development paths there. Taking your application, hosting it as a tab, building something new from scratch with JavaScript, in things like React and TypeScript through SharePoint framework. So pretty flexible. Anyone else with some comments on that one? You might have any other sort of feedback?
Yeah,
yeah, Bill.
People should definitely join the Microsoft 365 developer program. The hub site is developer.microsoft.com, and then that will lead you on to Microsoft 365, and then there's a whole ton of resources that just fan out from there when people want to get started.
Definitely. That's a great thing. I mean, step number one for a lot of these development projects is you don't want to go develop against the tendency, that you're actually using to send all your emails and Teams communications out. You don't want to do that. Go to the developer program, go get that test tendency, and then go, be able to go work and play around and create users and delete things and send emails. It's definitely probably a great first step for a lot of different types of integrations that you're going to go build. Let's see.
And TypeScript, of course. So if you've been developing in C#, then TypeScript's a good language to use rather than native JavaScript to ease you into that world. If that's your background in C# and ASP.NET development.
Yeah. All right. So keep the questions coming if you've got them. As you think about new things, as maybe a conversation sparks a question. I'm going to sort of maybe turn it to our experts and sort of ask what their sort of impressions of Ignite are, what they're most excited about. I'll probably start with you, Yannick, since you're at the center of my screen right now. As you look at Microsoft Ignite, a lot of the new announcements, new technologies, and those kinds of things. Any particular one or two of those technologies that really sticks out to you as something you're looking to code against or start playing with?
Yeah, first of all, the meetings extensibility, of course, because it's another extensibility point in Microsoft Teams that allows us to integrate our custom experiences in a different place in the Teams application. And it will allow us to create multiple new experiences for our end users.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the other one that I really like is the resource-specific consent, because it gives us the ability to limit the accessibility of our applications to data inside our organization. It allows us or limits our application to just get information for a specific team and not for the whole organization.
Yeah, that's definitely one that I've seen a lot of a number of different developers who go and build out an application. It's great, it works great. They hand it to their IT team and they're like, okay, well now I need to, it's asking for this broad sort of tenant-wide permission. It needs that in order to work. And now I need to go prove to those administrators that, okay, here you can go review my code, you can do those kinds of things. And resource-specific consent helps developers actually narrow down the set of permissions so that, it's the usage of the application is more constrained, which can lead to more safety, for example, in the kind of code that you write. So definitely a really cool enabling technology for that. One of the in a previous session, I asked, what's your sort of, most interesting technology, and the first thing they said was, well, it's not actually on your slide, but I'm really interested in Azure Communication Services. That's a really big, large announcement at Microsoft Ignite. Really under the covers, it's powered by the same team's infrastructure. And if you back up and look at the spectrum of the different solutions that we have for building like communications apps, ones that maybe embed audio or video, one end of the spectrum, you can take things inside of Microsoft Teams. You can take the concept of a scheduled meeting. You can schedule it through Microsoft Graph. You'll get back a web join URL. You can then go share out that web join URL through your application so that people can go join a Teams meeting together. With meetings extensibility, you can actually start to customize that experience. So there's actually a lot you can do with just meetings inside of Microsoft Teams to get started in building custom communication experiences. But a lot of times what people want to do is they actually want to go build a highly custom application with the audio and the video embedded straight inside of that application, powered by the robust infrastructure of Teams that's scaling around the world and handling billions of meeting minutes per day. But you want it to be just custom inside of your applications, and Azure Communication Services can help you with that. So it's got a number of different embeddable controls through the web for mobile applications that you can embed inside of your apps. You can embed audio, video, those kinds of bits of infrastructure. And we're also working on a number of ways to kind of further connect those two technologies together, so that you can get the best of all worlds. Maybe some of the users are in Teams, maybe some of the users are in your custom applications, but you can bring all those things together. And so Azure Communication Services, it was designed to be a great developer service, easy to pick up, easy to use, like a lot of other Azure services, so it's just Azure Communication Services. But don't let the name fool you. It's actually got a lot of the great infrastructure of Microsoft Teams behind it to kind of power those kind of experiences at scale. And we're going to be working to do more to kind of connect those two together, so you can just pick and choose and use different sides of it all together. So really exciting. It's a really great start, and hopefully you'll check it all out and take a look at that as well. All right. So Jeremy, you're on the product team. Hopefully you don't mind me calling on you, but
Sure.
How's your Ignite been going so far? Any sort of interesting reactions or interesting feedback, or features that you're happy to be launching from the engineering side?
I think from a Microsoft 365 perspective, I think the most powerful thing we announced this week in general availability is the search connectors. It got a lot of noise at Build when we kind of announced the preview, and it's just a huge way for partners to integrate their data into the Microsoft 365 experience, whether it's inside Windows search bar, which is more than just searching to launch Word and PowerPoint and Outlook, because it integrates with all the documents you work with. But it can also be Teams search and Outlook search, and everywhere else there's a search box within any of our own experiences. And so the partners that the engineering group for Search Connectors have worked with, to get them integrating all their data into our search index is just super powerful to allow users to work wherever they're working, wherever they're working focused, and have that overlap going. And then if they want to integrate our search results into their products, they just use the search API. And so they get the same experience of search and the same results, whether they're in our application experiences or whether they're in, the application experiences of the other vendors that they purchase. So I think for me, that's the biggest change, that we're going to see the world of kind of staying in your own flow, to borrow the words of Mr. Mike Amalan.
Yeah.
And, not have to keep alt-tabbing and jumping around. And,
yeah.
I think that's just really key for focusing on what you're doing at the time.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite statistics is, we did some research with some users. This was pre-COVID, so probably a lot of things have changed. But one of the things we found in that research was that people spend 20% of their time just looking for information. And that doesn't sound like a lot. 20% doesn't sound like a lot, but when you think about it, it's actually 1 day of the week just spent searching for information, pulling things together, building, reports and analytics, so that you can then turn around and go actually do something with that. And so, by integrating everything into, sort of a unified search, you just make that, hopefully you cut down on that day spent just searching for information. So it's a pretty big deal. Search is such a critical functionality. Sometimes I think we forget, like, oh yeah, this has got to be the most solid thing that people do, just because finding and pulling together information, certainly at a company like Microsoft and the size that it has, that's sometimes can be a non-trivial task.
The proliferation of where documents can be based on the different teams that I'm a member of, depending on what projects I'm working on, search becomes literally the only way to find anything.
Yeah.
Even for myself, remembering whether I put it in my team's team or Yina's team's team bucket or in a shared virtual team bucket. And so search is just the easiest way to do that. But I think also the other benefit that I'm excited about seeing out of the non-developer space is Project Cortex, which steps on the shoulders of search, and we've had it internally for a bit, and seeing those topics get highlighted in news posts that I put inside of SharePoint communication sites, and being able to click on that and not just see search results for our Office documents, but also for other search connected information is just killer. It's just such a powerful way to discover content that there's no way you would ever find before in the past. Just digging around teams where you've got permissions to them.
Using AI now as well. Like the search is thinking for you rather than just.
And it does make it, like whenever search gets better, your organization has to be very aware of the security and locking down documents. But it just makes things so much easier for users to discover things that would have just, never ever been discovered before.
Yeah, if you didn't set your permissions right on something, somebody can find it now, which wasn't so much a problem before. So no security through obscurity. Make sure everything's secure.
Never a good plan, but even less so. So we have another question. So the question was asking, can you elaborate a bit about the low-code developer capabilities of Office scripts? So I could definitely get started. I would love to hear other people's thoughts, maybe Bill, yours as well. But Office scripts, fundamentally starts with this idea. I mean, we've always had an ability to extend Excel with JavaScript through an add-in. So you package it all up, you build your web pages, you call some JavaScript APIs, and you've got this add-in. That's always been kind of a professional developer task. Well, now with Office scripts, which is available in the online web versions of Excel, what you can do is you can actually, just write JavaScript in line to do, a number of different tasks. The other cool thing about that is that there's a script recorder, so you can record different types of actions. Of course, that makes debugging a lot easier. It makes it possible to kind of discover everything that's going on. And then the final thing that's really nice about it is we're also working to make sure that those scripts that you write and that you embed inside of Excel, you can actually reuse those as Power Automate flow actions. And so, in response to this or that or the other thing, you can actually run an Office script that might go calculate some information and then go return a value inside of your Power Automate script. And so, if you just think about probably the amount of developer tasks that are go take this data inside of Excel, go shred it, go process it, go parse it, go put some output out there. And the idea that now, if you're handy with JavaScript, you can actually go write it yourself just straight in line. It's actually a really cool capability. Bill, did you have any other?
Yeah, I really like it. It's a sort of a low entry level to, it's almost getting you in, not quite the same as the Office add-ins, which are more of they're sort of asynchronous APIs, but they're similar synchronous versions of those APIs. But it's something you can use as a non-developer. So it's still code, but it's sort of generated. It's a bit like recording a macro. So I think it's a great way of getting people into that. And then it will generate some script, which you could adapt, I suppose, and then turn into an add-in. And so that could be the thing that leads people into starting to use Office add-ins, which I think is an underused feature of the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're excited about that. We're working to kind of make that more robust, make that bring that to other places and other locations too. But a great start. Excel is probably the foremost application where that's kind of an acute need for people who are working on it. Cool. So I'll probably go around to our experts and ask a little bit for what sort of strikes their fancy as well. Let's go see. So Alexis, if you're happy to go speak, any things that you're sort of looking to get your hands on as a developer to go write some code against, from Ignite 2020?
Yeah, actually, because I'm spending my day on the UC parts. I'm really looking forward to play with Azure Communication Service and meeting extensibility and see what we can do with the actual graph communication API as well. So
yeah, good stuff. So one question that was kind of inbound was, Delve uses a concept of boards to actually go find files and organize related documents. How does the new search API actually help, build on this and help find more content? The boards capability is one that maybe I'm not quite as familiar with. Maybe other folks have an answer to that one. I certainly use the people-based search functionality of Delve quite a bit. I think it's probably a human thing that we tend to kind of associate documents with people, and so I'm always like, okay, Ben's working on graphs, so I'm gonna go look up Ben's information for that. I don't know if Jeremy, if you're still online, or other folks. I guess I'm not familiar enough with the graph search APIs to know if there's kind of good people-based search in there yet. I'm sure it's coming if it's not. But if there's a good handy way to do some of the people-based search type of things that you could, do in Delve, is just maybe one way to answer that question. But if other folks have thoughts on, the graph search APIs that they'd want to talk about and some of the flexibility there.
So, Mike, as well as the interesting thing with graph that using a product-specific API doesn't give you is that you can be in one particular workload and look across to a different workload to do those searches. So thinking some of the sort of underpinnings inside our bot product, the ability to use the search APIs and combine that with, say, for example, the context of the Microsoft Teams team that you're in. So look up the owners, look up the members, go and find out some more information about them, the documents they've been modifying. Is that document held within the team? The pivots that you can achieve through graph can be really exciting and add some real context to the conversation that's going on. And I think the meeting app capabilities that are forthcoming, they're going to be really exciting to allow us to do that. So you've got that real-time capability of natural language understanding combined with the graph insights that we can get. So not only can we straight out of the Microsoft box get the conversation transcribed, but we can actually then start to think about how we're going to go off into graph and find out more insights about the person, about the team, what's happening, and combine that with potentially third-party services like some of the Azure Cognitive Services stuff. So it's a really exciting sort of nucleus now building around that sort of conversational user experience rather than what we've traditionally done a couple of years ago, which is everything was about a web page. Now it's Teams being the conversational hub for a lot of getting stuff done.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, if nothing else, that's the beauty of Microsoft Graph, is that things are organized as a graph. So if I want to, find out more information about, for example, Ben, I can go, start by searching him up in Graph and sort of find some of the related items and the related connections. There's a number of APIs with insights built in, so I can actually leverage, some of what Graph knows about, the connections between people to kind of do better queries. I'm going to paste in a link to the Graph Search Beta API as well. So this is an API that you can sort of take a look at to kind of explore all the things you can do with the Search API in addition to all the different other ways that you can go traverse the graph as well. So yeah, really cool stuff. All right, we're gonna keep going. Wes, I don't think I've asked you yet, Wes, what you were thinking about Microsoft Ignite and some of the new stuff that's there that's hopefully juicy and interesting for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a sort of mixed pair of hats to wear. So obviously coming from a SharePoint background, a lot of the SharePoint announcements were interesting and exciting. I think the finally seeing the SharePoint intranet being part of Teams in that home app, it's a great step forward, because it's something that we've had to build with a manifest in Teams. You know, it's been doable for about a year, but now it's going to be straight integration between the products. That's great. The bot composer, so the bot framework composer and these adaptive dialogues is a really cool technology, and combine that with, like I say, the Graph API, and you've got an incredibly powerful way to converse with the content and connections across the organization. So there's a lot of developer goodness down in some of the big announcements around those different platforms, and it's, I think, really exciting to see how Microsoft are bringing the kind of hyperscale of insights into the platform data. They're bringing the APIs to now allow an ISV to innovate in a particular use case, and I think that's been a trend that we're seeing just getting better and better. That instead of doing a lot of the core plumbing that we used to do 5 years ago, as an ISV, we can now just go, okay, we want to solve this really cleanly defined business problem, and it's that graph, this technology on bot framework, it's a Teams app here, and off we go. We haven't got to build all the integrations or a complete ASP.NET hosted website to do those things. So it was just a really good set of building blocks being announced from my perspective.
Yeah, lots of good mentions, lots of good capabilities there. So yeah, definitely go check them out. I think we're about at time now, so hopefully you got all your questions in. Hopefully we had a good, interesting conversation, and you've got some more leads of different technologies to go look at and to go peek at. So with that, I want to thank you for joining in. I want to thank all our experts for sort of attending at all hours, all around the world. So very cool. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of Ignite and check out all the other content that's going on. And, as you can see, check out all additional content that we have in depth. You can find it on dev.microsoft.com/Microsoft365, to get links to all these different sessions and more content from there. So with that, thank you so much for attending, and goodbye and good night and good morning. Thanks.